Hello, it's Joni Rotten here. I'm going to read another essay. This one is called Chance from the Theistic Perspective. It's from 1996. And it goes as follows. An introduction and summary. Many Christians are suspicious of the role played by chance in evolution. Their suspicions are exasperated whenever apologists for evolution treat chance like some metaphysical entity. It's the antithetical to God. This apparent conflict between chance and God is illusory and unnecessary. The role played by chance in biological evolution, microevolution or macroevolution, is no different than the roles played by chance in any other scientific theory. For example, quantum mechanics, statistical mechanics, thermodynamics, meteorology, pathology. The use of the term chance in any scientific theory is not strictly a statement about causation or lack of causation. Rather, it is a statement about our lack of knowledge about causation. Theism has always maintained that God can and does determine the outcome of random events. Therefore, random events in nature are in no way an obstacle to God's providential action, providing something with us, but I'm not trying to say that out loud. Providential. Quite the opposite. There are one way in which God could exert providential care. No thanks. What do scientists mean by chance? When physicists use the term chance in a scientific theory, they mean simply this. The final state of a system cannot be completely specified in terms of its initial conditions, either in principle, the results of a quantum measurement, or in practice. In quantum mechanics, the element of chance is formally built into the theory. The outcomes of quantum measurements can only be specified And in classic mechanics, the final state of chaotic systems depend so sensitively upon the initial conditions that in practice it is impossible to specify all the variables precisely enough to predict the final state. In these systems, based upon experience and certain general considerations, ensembles of final states can be assigned certain probabilities of occurring. Biologists and medical professionals use chance and probabilities in this second classical sense. For example, the chance that a disease will reoccur in a patient. In evolutionary biology, a chance event is simply an event which is not caused by the organism itself, in which we could not have predicted given or our limited knowledge of the initial conditions which affect the organism's survival. For example, a natural disaster, or its genetic information, a mutation. Chance in evolution or in any other specific theory is semi-quantitative statement about our ignorance. Our lack of precise knowledge of an initial conditions or our lack of understanding of how a particular final state is selected. How can chance events be compatible with God's providence? The use of the term chance in any scientific theory is not strictly a statement about causation or lack of causation. Rather, it is a statement about the lack of knowledge about causation. Events which appear random from our human perspective need not be uncaused from the divine, transcendent perspective. On the contrary, Theistic philosophy has always maintained that God can and does determine the outcome of chance events. That's in Proverbs 16:33. The lot is cast into the lap, but its every decision is from the Lord. The purpose of this fact is, FOQ, is that what that is? Is not to argue the chance event must be seen from a theistic perspective. Likewise, this fact is not intended to argue that macroevolution must be true or that evolutionary creationism is preferable to various versions of progressive creationism. The purpose of this fact is to merely to point out that the element of chance in microevolution, macroevolution, or any other scientific theory is in no way antithetical to the traditional theology of God's providential control. A number of scientists who have both solid scientific understanding of chance and a thorough understanding of the Christian doctrine of providence have written essays on this topic. Donald McKay in 1978, 1988, and John Polkerhorn from 1989 offer two excellent perspectives. Donald McKay's perspective. McKay explains that events which are fundamentally unpredictable from human perspective, for example, the outcomes of quantum measurements, need not be undetermined from God's perspective. He begins by rejecting the idea of a universe that can be run on its own without God, instead suggesting the idea of dynamic stability, the apparent stability of the matter, particles, and fields of universe is not an intrinsic property. Rather, it is due to a continual, dynamic, sustaining activity of God. McKay uses the analogy of a game of Pong played on a television screen. Although the paddles, balls, and walls on the television screen appear to be stable objects, we know that, in fact, the screen is continually bombarded by electron beams, and the images of the objects are refreshed dozens of times per second in a dynamic process, which gives us the illusion of intrinsic stability. McKay writes that one of the goals of science, perhaps its main goal, is to understand the causal connections between events. God is not a missing link in an otherwise complete change of causal events. Rather, God is the basis for the whole chain. Again, he uses the Pong analogy. By observing the way the ball bounces off the paddles and walls, we may develop laws for the motion of the ball. But we know that the underlying basics for its motion is the programming in the black box that sits in front of the television. It would be premature to conclude that once we know the laws of the behaviors of the paddles and the balls, the black box is unnecessary. The theistic perspective of dynamic stability neatly removes any metaphysical teeth from the word chance. A physical event which is not completely predictable by its initial conditions, such as the result of quantum measurement, is neither meaningless nor uncaused. The outcome is still very much under God's control. We simply cannot fully predict it. John Polkerhorn's perspective offers a perspective which is different from a different form of complementary, is different from and complementary to McKay's. Polkinghorne moves quickly past any consideration of quantum mechanics or dynamic stability. Instead, he discusses how modern understandings of chaos allows the possibility for God to affect the outcomes of processes without contravening the ordinary laws of nature and without necessarily pulling invisible deterministic strings during every chance event. Polkerhorn begins by stressing that chance and necessity go hand in hand. Random events occur within systems which both constrain the choices and respond to the choices made. For example, random meetings of prebiotic organic molecules happen within a system of natural laws, lots which were designed by the creator to favor certain combinations. In the same way, genetic mutations can be thought of as small step explorations of large dimensional genomic phase space, which was also designed by a creator, the creator. Polkenhaus writes in 1989, necessity in the regular ground of necessity is the regular ground of possibility expressed in scientific law. Chance in this context is the means for the exploration and realization of inherent possibility through continually changing and therefore at any time contingent individual circumstances. It is important to realize that chance is being used in this tame sense, meaning the shuffling operations by which what is potential is made actual. It is not a synonym for chaotic randomness, nor does it justify just a lucky fluke. I am still deeply impressed by the anthropic potentiality of the laws of nature, which enable the small step explorations of tamed chance to result in systems of such wonderful complexity as ourselves. Second, Polkinghorne notes that the laws of necessity, the playing field upon which shuffling operations of chance must operate, are designed and the ultimate outcome need not be unforeseeable or arbitrary. In 1989, he says this, it is from this interrelationship between chance and certainty that order arises out of chaos, as we see exemplified in the behavior of dissipative systems, which converge onto predictable limit cycles, approached long contingent paths. To acknowledge a role for tame chance is not in the least to deny the possibility that there is a divinely ordained general direction in which the process of the world is moving. However, contingent detailed aspects of that progression, such as the number of human toes, might be. Third, Polkinghorne notes that the sensitivity and open flexibility of chaotic systems allows God one way to subtly yet effectively interact with his creation. For example, one could imagine God tweaking microscopic events to cause macroscopic results. I like that. But Polkinghorne has something much less crude in mind. He calls attention to our own human ability to choose and act. Although certain bottom-up principles, physical laws such as conservation of energy, constrain the way our brain works, the great sensitivity and flexibility of such complex system allows for the probability for certain top-down organizing principles, our sense of consciousness and free will, to have significant effects without contravening physical law. Polkinghorne does not speculate how this might actually work within our brains. Those answers are still well beyond our understanding. He does, however, point out that the open flexibility of complex systems allows for the possibility of such top-down principles. Polkinghorne uses this as an analogy for how God might also use top-down principles in his personal interactions with his creation. In summary, Polkinghorne emphasizes that the universe is not a universe of clockwork determinism. From a theistic perspective, the interplay of chance and necessity, which we see scientifically, suggests that the universe is so constructed that one, God can act personally within it, and two, human beings may exercise their free will within it, and three, the universe can explore its own freedom and potential by the evolving process. In closing, I should note that McKay and Polkinghorne do not wish to restrict God to this sort of subtle action. Both our authors write about miracles, but that is outside the scope of this fact. Frequently asked questions. That's how long it took to get to the front of my brain. Thank you for bringing me that paper a little too late. I have made a fool of myself, but it's not the only time. So it's okay. The point of both authors is that this Frequently asked question is that random events, whether described by physics, evolutionary biology, or any other science, are in no way an obstacle to God's uh, proved, pro- providential action. Quite the opposite. They are one way in which God could exert providential care. And then there's some acknowledgments. You can go. Anyway, I thought that was pretty interesting. I know some people try to stay away from God, but this isn't talking about Jesus as God necessarily. So, to me, God was math, and I would be reading that instead. Some type of divine symphony. I like the way they've been saying that. So that concludes the article. It does go along with another one, Evolution and Chance, which you can see that it is purple because I have also glossed over it. And I will record and read it as well because they found it to be pretty interesting, although a little bit longer than this one. And you're more than welcome to correct me, make fun of me, or whatever you like in the comment section. If you don't like the way I read, let me know. And I'll just tell you to go read it yourself on your channel. I don't know too many channels that read these things and don't have ulterior motives and such thought. We're thinking, we're asking questions, we're seeing what others are saying, we're putting together pieces. So comment below if this made you think of anything else. If you have articles you'd like me to read, please leave the titles. Links don't always work, but I am capable of searching a title, so you're more than welcome to do that. And if I find it to be an interesting one, which typically most of my peeps have interesting things, share it with me. It doesn't have to be about this. It can really be just about anything as long as it's roughly around humans and why we do what we do, because that's what I'm unlocking over here. And I raw read, which means that I do not take the time to read through these and learn how to pronounce every word. Nor am I going to take and edit out when I missay things. I'm learning as I go, and I'm only sharing what I'm learning as I go. So we're doing this together. If it looks somewhat interesting, and then I'm going to share it